Roe versus Wade has been deemed the law of the land since 1973. And over the years, under that so-called law, tens of millions of preborn babies have been killed. Yet it looks like that may soon change, that abortion may be coming to an end. Let's take a look. This is Beyond the Cover with your host, Gary Benoit, and today we have with us Robert Owens, who wrote a tremendous article for the December 27 issue of the New American Magazine. The article is entitled, Ending Abortion in America. Robert, we're glad to have you with us.
Gary, thanks for having me on.
No, thank you. Now, Robert, you, of course, have been a trial lawyer for 20 years, so you know something about the law. You also do a program for the John Birch Society entitled Constitution Corner. And of course, you are now regional field director for the John Birch Society, and I know out in the field you meet many people involved with the pro-life movement. Why is your article entitled Ending Abortion in America? Do you think we're on the threshold of that?
I think we're seeing some really exciting developments in the law, and I think the concept that was put forward with the Texas anti-abortion law has really been tremendously effective. It's still obviously working its way through the legal process, and of course, there was a period where hardly a day was going by when a court was saying, yes, it's good, and then another court was saying, no, it's not good, and then another court was saying, yes, it's good, and then another court was saying, no, it's not good. So, I mean, this is going to be a very contentious issue right up to the point where it's finally decided at the Supreme Court. And of course, at the same time, there's another Supreme Court case, the Mississippi case, which is really a direct assault on Roe v. Wade. So here, probably sometime in June, we'll get decisions on both of these cases. And where the direct assault on Roe may or may not stand, this Texas anti-abortion law has a chance. And so it's very exciting in that development. And if we could see even a shift to the states as versus the federal government in terms of who gets to regulate those issues, I think we'll see in short order half the country, if not more, have a ban on abortion. And I think that in the next 15, 20 years, the rest of the states will start coming along. Even the liberal states, they're realizing that the innocent murder of human babies is just not going to stand. That it's just not, it's so morally repugnant that it'll come to an end in those states as well.
Now, your article, Robert, is very heavily focused on the Texas heartbeat bill. What is it about that particular legislation that makes it more bulletproof, so to speak, than other pro-life initiatives that have been passed by other states that have been knocked down by the courts?
Yeah, and it's a good question, and one that I get a lot, Gary. So the issue is how the legislation prevents abortion from happening and how it's structured. And I'll sort of break it down in this way. Normally, when a case is said to have been struck down by the Supreme Court, what's actually happening is the court is saying, hey, we're going to issue an order preventing a government agent from doing a certain type of action. So in most cases, or in most statutes that have been passed by the states post-Roe, it's been a situation where it's been criminalized and some type of criminal procedure would have to take place, or it's administrative, and like they'll remove medical licenses or those types of things by any doctors that perform them. But ultimately, there's a government agent that's taking some type of action on behalf of the state government. And so the court cases strike down the ability for those, government agents to do things. What this law does, what the Texas anti-abortion law does, is it says, look, we're not going to have government agents enforce anything. What we're going to do is set it up such that private individuals have a private right of action to sue for a statutory amount of $10,000 anybody that's engaged in an abortion. And as a result, the courts don't really have jurisdiction to regulate the conduct of private citizens. And so they lose jurisdiction over that process. And that's the exciting aspect of this, is that, it sort of, it cuts off the court's ability to take action in this direction. And that's why the Texas law might stand where the Mississippi or other laws might not.
Now, I know somebody who is extremely liberal, the governor of California, Governor Gavin Newsom, has said that he's going to take the approach that was used to protect life. Of course, he would refer to it as being against choice, but to take that approach in the Texas heartbeat bill and apply that in California against guns. What are the chances of him being able to do that, and what are the differences between gun control and protecting the lives of preborn babies?
Yeah, so it's interesting to see, and those threats have been, issued that the states would take actions in that regard. It's hard to necessarily know from a hypothetical until we actually see the statutes, written as to how well that could come into play. From the standpoint is, does somebody have to shoot the gun? Is it just that somebody owns it and somebody else sees it? I mean, so there's a bunch of hypothetical issues that could come into play to derail this, process from being applied in other areas. So at the moment, now, the answer to your question very directly is don't know, because I haven't seen the language yet. But I think that, any assaults like that on the Second Amendment, of course, would be very difficult to carry out, just as this one was very difficult to carry out as well. So it's certainly something to be concerned with. But we're just going to have to take a wait and see on that issue and deal with it as is. Although I'm sure, Gavin Newsom might be in a situation where he's driven so many millions of people out of his state that this might just be the final nail that drives the rest of them out of the state. And so it's going to be, him and a handful of liberals that are left.
Well, of course, in the case of trying to restrict firearms, that is going against the Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. But is there any such claim or any such statement in the Constitution that says it's okay to murder a preborn baby?
Well, of course not, right? I mean, it's nonsensical. The whole litany of case law that developed, including Roe and its whole progeny, is completely illegitimate garbage that I think will be eventually swept into the dustpan of history, along with Plessy versus Ferguson and Dred Scott versus Sanford, and so many other just horrible Supreme Court decisions that are not only bad decisions but a stain on our history.
Now, the Texas heartbeat bill obviously protects the lives of most babies, but not every single baby, because it doesn't protect the lives of those prior to when a heartbeat can be protected. What can be done, Robert, to protect the lives of all babies?
Yeah, so I think that, we've got to start the process of bringing it back. And ultimately, I think that the evidence is very clear. The scientific and moral evidence is very clear that life starts at conception. And I think the vast majority of scientific biologists will tell you that life starts at conception, right? So I think that ethos will start grinding its way through and start making people realize exactly what we're dealing with in this space. So part of it is a learning process. Part of it is we're going to have to take back this issue incrementally, just as it was lost incrementally. And so there's going to be that process going forward. But I know, for example, in Ohio, we just sponsored a bill to go forward that has the same mechanics of the Texas heartbeat bill, but it's there's no exceptions to it, right? It's a complete protection on life. So we're going to see that starting to come forward. And I think from Texas's perspective, they wanted to give at least enough wiggle room in the bill to give it the best overall possibility of passing, judicial muster. Once it has, I think we'll start seeing a lot of those exceptions ratcheted down and taken out of place.
Do you see states eventually exercising their power of nullification to declare Roe versus Wade null and void within their state borders?
Well, that's certainly what we're hoping. And in essence, that's what this Texas bill is. I mean, it's just sort of another way at nullification that also sort of eats away at federal jurisdiction to take measures along these lines. So I think that's absolutely the concept that's going to come into play. But we're going to need state legislatures to have a backbone
Right.
to really make this thing stick, because it wouldn't be surprised if, as more states start going down this road, there'll be federal pushback from the standpoint of, um, you know, them federal government trying to cut off, various medical, funding and those types of things that would come to the state. So, states going to have to be ready for the pushback from the federal government, and that's going to take citizens to put that backbone in their politicians to make sure it sticks.
Right. But in the meantime, of course, many lives are being saved just by having a law along the lines
Yeah,
of the heartbeat law in Texas.
yeah, absolutely. No, and that's exactly right. I mean, right now, thousands and thousands of babies are being saved, with this process, and it's fantastic, and we just need to expand it as quickly as possible into every other possible state we can get it into.
Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to add, Robert, regarding the abortion controversy?
Yeah, so hey, I think what we need to do is we need to continue to educate our fellow Americans that life begins at conception and that we are the special creation of God, right? This is not random happen chance or anything else that we're here on this planet. We are a very special creation of God. We need our fellow citizens to understand that. And once I think people get their heads around that, then all of a sudden the necessity of protecting and preserving life becomes so critical and becomes an essential thing that people have to be involved in. And then at that point, then it's a function of getting involved at the state government level to get people to realize how to be effective in passing these laws to save lives. And that's really what we're talking about. What I've seen, though, on the road is that the pro-life community is very robust. They're strong, they're united, they're committed to this mission. I see, billboards all the time when I'm on the road that are pro-life billboards. So I think that remnant is still very strong in the United States, and I think we've got a fantastic hope of getting these units to play together. And Gary, I'll tell you, it's hard though, because in the pro-life community, you have folks that it's got to be absolutely everything all at once or they're not going to play with anybody, right? You got other people that they seem to see the pro-life movement only as a fundraising opportunity, and they're not interested in being involved in anything that's actually part of the solution, because they're busy just milking this thing for as long as they can, as well. Ultimately, we've got to find a way to cut through all that clutter, get people united in this fight. And I think the Supreme Court decisions that are going to come down this summer, hopefully, will come down favorably to us. And hopefully, that'll be the catalyst to a real return. Because, Gary, I honestly believe, how can God bless a country that is just sanctioning a genocide of innocent children? And I think once we can end that genocide of innocent children, our country can have a real chance to go back to its heritage of liberty.
Well, I agree completely. And Robert, we appreciated the article that you did and appreciate your being on this program. So thank you very much.
Gary, thank you.